Hey everybody, Sunkeeper here. Hope you're all doing well. I was at the NRLA meeting yesterday, so that's the National Residential Landlord Association meeting that was held in Stoneleigh, just outside of, in between Coventry and Leamington. And I just wanted to give you a bit of a rundown following that meeting and kind of my thoughts kind of coming away from it. So I was kind of just reflected overnight on kind of what was said and kind of my thoughts. So essentially, the NRLA, or the National Residential Landlords Association, a bit of a mouthful, is a group, or it's a body really set up to represent landlords, to help and support private landlords and the private rental sector really. And it's headed up by a guy called Ben Beadle. He's the chief exec, and he was doing a talk yesterday. And they part of what they do is they provide training and support and documentation, all that sort of stuff to help keep landlords kind of on the straight and narrow and legal. But they also lobby government as well. So one of their roles is to work with government or lobby government to try and improve the situation for landlords and for tenants as well. They're trying to do it on both sides. And for those of you who are in the property industry or are aware of the property industry, I suppose it's fair to say that landlords have had a proper bashing over the last sort of few years. And listening to what was being said on the day yesterday, I kind of came away with a few kind of reflections. I suppose the first one to sort of say is that just looking around the room, I would say that probably the average age of the person in the room was probably 60 plus, to be honest. There was a lot of grey hair in that room. I'm starting to get a bit of a grey beard, so perhaps I fit into that category as well. But yeah, definitely a lot of grey hair in that room, and it just made me sort of aware that I think I don't know what the average age of a landlord is. I guess the NRLA will probably have that data. Would be interesting to find out. But a lot of these landlords are going to be looking to exit the housing sector, I guess, at some point in probably the coming sort of 10, 20 years. And whether they sell the properties onto first-time buyers, whether they sell them on to other investors, I'm not sure. But there's definitely going to be quite a huge transfer of wealth over the next sort of few years as these aging sort of landlords pass their properties on to other people. So that was my first kind of thought from the coming away yesterday was, how does that all play out and how's that going to happen? And as landlords are being hit with kind of more and more legislation, is it likely that the aging landlords are actually going to kind of comply with all this sort of stuff, in that, it's probably going to be easier for them just to sort of say, well, I've had enough of this, I'm just going to sell up. I've probably got plenty of equity in the properties, I'm just going to sell them and get out, which, if they're obviously sold, put onto the market, and they're not purchased by other landlords or other wannabe investors, because it's just not as favourable as it used to be, or it doesn't seem to be, then what happens to those properties? What happens to the rental sector? Well, essentially, my thoughts are it's just going to put more pressure on the rental sector as those properties get sold to maybe first-time buyers or maybe sit empty. If they can't find another use for them. So that was the first thing, was this kind of the age and the wealth transfer, and even quite a few people. I spoke to quite a few people there, and they basically said, I'm only in this for the next few years, and I'm selling out, and I'm going to put the money somewhere else, and or go and spend it, and pass it on to the kids or whatever. So I think there is going to be more and more people kind of exiting, which is good for people that understand the sector and investors that kind of obviously want to get in and can talk to talk to aging landlords to sort of see if they can figure out how they can purchase these properties of them. And the second one was when Ben Beadle was talking about his interactions with government and how he's been trying to lobby government with some of these changes. Now, just to pick up on some of the changes that have happened over the last sort of few years, we've had the tax changes, so known as Section 24. So this is essentially where you can no longer offset your interest on your mortgage against your income. So this is essentially, landlords get taxed on turnover, not on profit. Now, this doesn't happen in any other industry at all. And if it did happen in any other industry, first of all, there'd be complete uproar from that industry. And second of all, it'd probably wipe that industry out, because most businesses or companies can't survive on being taxed on turnover. It just makes no sense. But that's kind of what goes on in the private rented sector, which has caused a lot of, it's forcing a lot of landlords, to incorporate essentially. So and run their property business inside a company. But a lot of landlords are stuck. They're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. They can't sell because there's capital gains tax to pay. So they can't transfer the asset into a company, and if they stay where they are, they're just making no money. So it kind of doesn't make any sense really. And then there's the Section 21 reforms that they're talking about. So Section 21 is essentially a no fault eviction. So this is basically where a landlord can give notice to a tenant to vacate the property. And it's essentially known as a no fault eviction. The tenant's not really done anything wrong, but the landlord needs to sell. Well, I can definitely see both sides of this. We're currently tenants at the moment in a rented property. That's where we live. So I understand that is it fair that really both sides kind of want security. So, but in the same way, putting my landlord hat on, it's like if I get to the point where I'm either not making any money or this investment doesn't make any sense anymore, then I need to sell the property and move on, and there should be a mechanism to be able to do that. There was obviously all the changes that have gone on with the EPC changes. So there was the government was trying to pass something where currently properties have to be a minimum EPC in order to be able to be rented, and they were talking about moving that level to a C. So properties had to be level C or above before they could be rented. Now that's kind of been scrapped at the moment, because I think they realised that actually that was just a mammoth task, and the cost to landlords to do that. There's so much old Victorian stock out there, or older sort of properties, that would just cost a fortune to actually get to an EPC C or above. Now, I totally agree that there should be, we should have energy efficient properties, and that it should be what everyone's kind of driving towards. But to bring kind of legislation in, because I think it's supposed to be coming in 2025, and then they kick the can down to 2028. It just didn't make any sense, unless they were going to provide some support, financial support and some help to landlords to help that happen. Now, although that's been kicked down the road or it's been cancelled by the current government, Ben was saying last night that apparently if Labour get in, Labour have said that they're going to bring that straight back, so it may well be back on the agenda as soon as, if and when we get a Labour government. So we're not kind of out of the woods with that one as such. And then obviously, there's been a lot more increase in things like electrical testing and all that sort of side of things. Obviously during the pandemic there was eviction bans and rent payment terms. We couldn't evict tenants for a period of time. And then obviously, cost of living crisis. Everything's just gone up in value, and then obviously interest rates. Interest rates are going through the roof. I had one that came up the other day, so it actually caught me out because I got the wrong date on my tracking spreadsheet. Big fail on my part. I thought I'd got until December. It actually came up this month, and the rate went from I think it was 3.29%. Onto the standard variable rate, which was 9.5%. So effectively, my payments tripled, or were going to triple overnight. But shout out to Hitesh, who managed to get me a quick deal done with the same lender. So thanks for that, Twin Pine. So Hitesh at Twin Pine Mortgages. But going back to the so someone says all these this raft of changes that's been introduced and all this thing kind of going on, and really the end result is that landlords can't swallow all these costs, and when this stuff happens, all that ever happens is the cost gets passed straight to the tenants, because that's who's effectively paying the bill. And in the case where tenants are claiming benefits, then they'll try and claim there'll be pressure to the government to increase the benefits allowance, which is kind of currently happening at the moment. So they're kind of bringing on all these rafts of changes, and realistically, all it's doing is driving rents up. Really, it's all that's the net effect of all this sort of stuff. It's just driving rents up and up and up. And from the tenants' point of view, tenants see that they're greedy landlords. Greedy landlords are just putting the rents up and up and up to make more money. Well, that's just not the case. They're doing it just to kind of cover costs. Now, there was a lady talking as well who represented the the decent homes standard. So she was talking about the decent home standard as well. And again, this is a raft of kind of legislation that's been brought in. And that department, the department that looks after that, has Dash Services, which stands for Decent and Safe Home Services. It's been around for donkey's years. But as they introduce more and more legislation, it's just introducing more and more layers of people in the government that actually need to look after these services. So it's obviously creating employment in the government on one side, which is great, but obviously that all needs paying for. So all that payments comes out of obviously the taxpayer's pocket, which then drives tax up, which makes the cost of living more expensive. And I suppose one of the things I wasn't too sure about kind of coming away from the meeting was that the way Ben was talking was that he was sort of saying that we should really just accept kind of what we can get, or basically take what we can get from the government, because if we don't, it could be a whole lot worse, which to me just seemed really defeatist, to be perfectly honest. I just kind of came away from it thinking we seem to have this really defeatist attitude. And when I was looking at a few numbers, there's about 100,000 landlords in the NRLA, so about 100,000 members, and I think there's about 2.74 million private landlords. And again, the numbers are a bit sketchy because they're a bit difficult to actually figure out. But there's about 2.74 million private landlords, and those landlords, majority have only got kind of one or two properties. Some more have got kind of between 2 and 5, and there's only about 18% that are actually classed as like portfolio landlords, which basically means they've got 5 properties or more. But even at 2.75 million, if they only had sort of 2 or so each, that's probably 6 million properties or 6 million properties out there that are being controlled, and there's probably a whole load more than that. So I suppose what I'm saying is there's a massive group of people there that could put far more pressure on the government to find a fairer way forward. And I honestly believe that it should be fair for landlords, and it should be fair for tenants, because all tenants want to do is have a really nice home to live in at a reasonable cost, and all landlords want is to be able to provide a really nice home for tenants at a reasonable cost and have a decent investment off the back of it. That's all that's really they really want. But I do fear that at the moment, the way things are going, and we've sort of seen, if you've got properties in Wales, it's a whole lot worse with the way some of the reforms they've been brought in there. All it's doing is just introducing more layers and layers of bureaucracy in, and it's almost like the way kind of Ben and the NRLA are kind of going. It's almost a case of, well, just be careful what you don't agree to, essentially, because what's coming down the track could be a hell of a lot worse. But my kind of way of looking at it is going, I just think we should be a lot more aggressive with it, and rather than just sit back and kind of go, oh yeah, that's fine, that's we'll deal with that. It's almost we're just being kind of like nipped at, kind of like little bit by little bit, until there'll be nothing left of the private rented sector, and and it's just going to get. I just honestly think it's going to get into more of a mess before it all gets sorted out. But looking on the positive side of it, I think there's tons of opportunity out there, because as all this goes on, as I sort of said earlier, the ageing landlords, people that have been landlords for many years and have probably got lots of equity in properties, are going to be looking for exits. So I definitely think that's where the opportunity for people who want to get into property, they're willing to kind of work with the legislation and learn the rules and be kind of proper landlords. I think there's tons of opportunity out there. So yeah, just some of my key takeaways from the NRLA meeting yesterday. I'll speak to you all soon. Take care. Cheers. Bye now.